Okay, so hey everyone, it's the 19th of November 2021, heading towards the end of pretty eventful year, and we have the Neighbourhoods team, Sid, Jethro, and Emmeline. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, David.
And things have moved pretty fast since we last talked. So excited to hear a little bit more about how Neighbourhoods is coming together, and excited to hear about your community offering that I think went live today, well, on the 19th of November, depending on when this goes live. Thank you, Emmeline, for the reminder. All right, so tell me what's been going on and how's Neighbourhoods evolved, and yeah, what's the vision now?
David, and you're right, it has evolved and it has been moving really fast. And I would say the last 3 to 4 months in particular, as we put word out about neighborhoods, the response we've got and people coming in and resonating with the concept has been pretty overwhelming. And that's just created this very strong reaffirming feedback loop where it's, spurred us on to go faster with what we're trying to create and with more conviction. So the last few months have been pretty special. And yeah, so you could say neighborhoods has gotten a lot more tangible, all the different pieces coming together, everything from the economics of it to the exact offering of it to what it is. We're getting much better at answering those questions and putting those pieces in place.
Great. So what is it?
So you could say neighborhoods is a social coordination or is social coordination infrastructure for the distributed web. And for those who are familiar with the distributed web with Holochain, which agent-centric architectures will know, technology is getting really composable and modular in these spaces. And so you could have examples where, if you and your group of a few thousand people want to chat with each other, you have your own private network with information running within this network. But it's often throwing up this problem of, all right, like how do we discover each other in these spaces? Because we're so used to discovering and engaging with people on platforms where Zuckerberg's algorithms, for example, would be guiding our engagement, and we would meet people on Twitter. But in these little modular networks, we need a new way in which we engage or discover each other, or a new watering hole around which we cluster. And so neighborhoods is an attempt at that problem. And so it allows these groups of people to cluster around what they can spin up as a neighborhood with different tools associated with a specific reputation system or culture around it associated with it. And so what we're saying is the distributed web allows us to move from platforms to neighborhoods. And that's the very, very short, just as short as I could get. Not sure if Emmeline or Jethro, you'll want to take an attempt as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's helpful to think about neighborhoods through two different routes of early adopters. One route is what we're calling the community activator role. And community activators are people who want to spin up networks, where they can chat, they can coordinate, they can have their sharing circle of whatever sort, but they don't necessarily want to conform to the dictates of a big platform. So they want to basically be able to bundle together a bunch of simple tools for their community and then get together with that community and say, hey, what do we care about? What's important? How do we want to design our culture? How do we want to design, the metrics that we use to make sense of what's going on in our space? So that's one route. And then another route is the developer route. So these are people who want to experiment with Holochain. They want to build a bunch of fun little tools, that communities can use widely without necessarily having to be employed by a big tech company. And actually, I'll close the developer bit with a line from Paul Daust from Holo, who said something just fantastic in our Discord the other day, which was that he sees a lot of the Holochain community developers converging on, he said, a design aesthetic that feels very neighborhoods compatible And so neighborhoods is kind of reifying this existing sentiment into a formal approach.
Very cool. So just let me check from a Web3 angle, in a way, like I think where this is, let me just check if what I'm hearing. So I guess, because I think with neighborhoods, what I'm always trying to do when I'm listening is move it beyond how you might understand it and recognize it in a holochain context, into how you might understand it and recognize it in the world, whether or not holochain matters for you. And that's been one of my principles for a long time. I remember, I don't know, probably 2019, having this chat with Art and Eric and Marianne. It's like, in many ways, my job at that time was to explain holochain for people who don't and will never care. And they're like, well, that's horrible. I was like, well, there's a lot of people out there who fit that category. So what I'm hearing a little bit more is, in a way, tools and kind of what's happening with the social side of tools and patterns for DAOs, but the social coordination tools. In a way, if you take a DAO, like what it kind of traditionally has been is a group of wallets agreeing on how to distribute money. But there's this wave over the last year of DAOs or NFT communities, essentially being social groups that are forming together to work out, like, in a way, Emmeline, exactly what you described, to work out what they want to do.
I mean, amazingly, DAOs are still using, people building the distributed web are still using G Suite to coordinate, right?
Yep.
So we want all the cushy, all the off-chain sort of stuff to be still happening on the distributed web for these groups.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And I think, okay, I'll just pause there. Yeah. So, but is that on the right track?
Yep, absolutely. Like, what you mean by allowing for this social coordination bit that DAOs did not permit.
Yeah, well, because exactly. I think, again, I've been chatting a lot with the Endless community lately, and and there's a lot of musicians that really don't like NFTs, and I'm sitting there thinking, but an NFT is simply 3 words that describe non-fungible tokens. You might not like these implementations of NFTs, absolutely, but I think it's still so early, isn't it, in terms of what's happening, that it's very easy to say, look, I don't like tokens, or I don't like NFTs. But I think what generally mean is there's a thread in the world right now that's overwhelming in the cultural narrative. Yeah. And so DAOs, in a way, are like, there's so much subtlety. But I guess what I'm really pointing to is, lately, like this last year, I've noticed the explosion of social groups forming, using whatever tools they have. Some, oftentimes Discord, or generally always Discord, for communication and coordination, as well as other sets of tooling. And sometimes the purpose is incredibly clear, and often the purpose isn't clear at all. Right. And it's almost like, by forming, the purpose forms as well. And who knows what you might form around it. I think, like, that's I guess that's kind of like the upgrade in my understanding of the world, which is also seems to be like what you really guys are saying. Is, yeah, and that's great. We're building tooling for that, or just structures and spaces for that to happen more easily.
I guess you could also say, groups may start clustering together, but they may not have, they might have a broad range of tools that they need for this clustering. So it might vary from sharing memes with each other, or sharing music with each other, or playing games with each other, or even, could be commercial activities, could be resource sharing like couchsurfing, etc. And what we're saying is, in the past, the platform architecture pushed each one of these tools, or each one of these tools would exert its pressure on a community. So if you're using a chat program or chat software, it's invariably trying to envelop you in its own, intentions.
Yep.
But with the neighborhoods architecture, these tools get really Lego brick-like, And so communities can actually say, hey, this membrane is ours. And within this membrane, we plug in a chat tool, a meme tool, a game tool. But the rules of the sphere of this membrane are ours. And so everything from the way the feed is organized to how you might bump into one another to who this group considers an interesting person to meet over a cup of coffee, to who's been making payments or transactions, all of that can actually occur within the membrane of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so
Okay. Beautiful.
neighborhoods, yeah. And so neighborhood basically gives this group infrastructure to articulate the rules or the culture of this group. And so this social coordination infrastructure is, you could say, the heart of this neighborhood. And then the neighborhood marketplace allows you to plug in those tools, which slot in without each little tool exerting its agenda on that community.
Yep.
And so that's in a nutshell what neighborhoods will enable.
And is neighborhoods then like visible? Is it like part of its implementation is a visible tool, a bit like Discord becomes like, a de facto, de facto like space definer for these types of communities, or Telegram becomes a space definer for other types of communities. Like, is that one of the things like you're going to or is neighborhoods a protocol and essentially a space that you would coordinate, or is it
yeah it's an interesting question. Discord does come up a lot, and so we do like the simple dumb dashboard of Discord. So you will have the situation where you have all your neighborhoods listed on the left, and all within the neighborhood you might have a dozen odd widgets that you're using, and you could also toggle that view and then say for chat, and then have all your neighborhoods that are using that specific chat software as well. So the Discord front end could be the initial neighborhoods front end that we could potentially roll out with. But there's another piece here, and I think neighborhoods would also have this almost like a reputation wallet of sorts. Think of it as a MetaMask wallet, but with reputation. And so as you hop from one neighborhood to another, neighborhoods that consider some of your reputation data relevant might ask you to port that in with you. So if Jethro has a community for memes and I like his sense of humor, I might actually allow David to port all his likes from Jethro's community into mine. And boom, from day one, Jethro has accelerated his engagement. And I think this is something dWeb has to think about, because we don't have the comfort of central algorithms driving our engagement. Like, we don't have centralized stacks where you can actually orchestrate how people bump into each other. And so in this way, communities figure that out, or accelerated social engagement occurs through reputation data. And so Jethro could be seen more in my community's feed because he has, or David could be seen more in my community's feed because he has 1,000 likes in Jethro's community. And so from day one, everything David speaks is noticed by everyone in the group,
because we've decided that matters to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Okay, but that's great, and it's really clear. And I think like so what I'm okay. So, but what I'm hearing is that neighborhoods like will be like there will be a tool. There'll be like a meta tool that people will play with, right? It might look a little bit like Discord, like you said. It might end up looking nothing like Discord. But there will be some kind of tool that you interact with to instantiate this space, and there'll be a marketplace of all sorts of other tools that you can pull in, and also okay.
I think a reputation, like a wallet for reputation data, is probably like the end useriest thing that Neighbourhoods is thinking about right now.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
And I will also say, for community activators, some kind of a dumb dashboard where they can say, hey, in my group, we like likes and claps and timestamps, or transaction data, and the ability for someone with little to no technical knowledge to be able to spin up a neighborhood, like that's very much the dream here. So a community activator, or someone who wants to run a neighborhood, could literally be spinning up and running a neighborhood in little to no time with very basic skills.
Yep. And I guess the interoperability layer potentially exists then what you're describing at the neighborhood level as well as at the individual level. In other words, like if there's a really high, if people are recognizing a beautifully functioning neighborhood, they might want to say, hey, we want to take a lot of the characteristics of this neighborhood, we want to share characteristics from this neighborhood, etc., because it's also, so the neighborhood as a space itself has the capacity to grow and share its reputation.
So I would say that's at two levels. You could have cultural templates, like
Yep.
I like David's meme community and I'm just copying the cultural template, and we could probably have like a few off the shelf that people can just pick up and go with. Like you'd have some which are very exclusive, like if it's a research or climate change discussion neighborhood, you want to have only the top 1% heard. But if it's a general meme posting community, it's more it's more general and everyone can be heard. So I think there's that at that level, but there's also what we're also working on is things like standards for these validators. So you could have the ERC20 for likes, the equivalent. And so if Jethro's community uses the ERC20 for likes, that's actually valid across communities, and that I think can be mind-blowing. Like what ERC20 did for tokens and the monetary economy could potentially be happening for social coordination as well. Which would be pretty cool.
And it's an interesting sea change, because what you see in DAOs right now, right, is that they'll give trivial amounts of their token to people for engagement, right? Like you make a really good post in one hive or something like that, and you get some honey. But that's their token, right? And so it's kind of, you can liquefy it in the same way as, it's fungible basically. But in the way that Neighbourhoods is envisioning reputation data, it's sort of like it stays reputation data from community to community and sort of boosts you across communities, rather than turning into like monetary value.
Well, exactly. That's actually why I was thinking that equally analogous to the DAO are the NFT PFP communities that are forming, because in a way that like the holding of that non-fungible token is a piece of reputation data that gets so but these are like micro reputation pieces that etc., that then can be recognized or understood in other communities as they become standardized, and some will not, and there'll be all types of agreements on how
And this is where Holochain has been so incredibly powerful for us, because attempting this sort of orchestration on blockchains has been really tough, because if you're spending 50 cents or $10 for a like, you can't really do any you can't really coordinate all that much. But within Holochain networks, if it's just being validated by 5,000 people or 50,000 people, the cost of a like is little to nothing. And so that spectrum of data that a community logs and the spectrum of data that becomes relevant to other communities is just wide open. And that's, I would say, that's this agent centricity is allowing all of this social coordination to start flooding in.
Yeah, it makes sense. Wow. Okay. So it sounds very exciting, and you're been building support, and you're going out to the community now with a token. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. I'll just say a line or two, and then maybe Jethro or Emmeline can jump in. But we've been doing this for a few years now, speaking about reputation currencies, social coordination. And so along the way, there's been, this community that's building, people we've been in a relationship with, that very heavily intersects with the Holochain community. And so all of these hackalongs and virtual interactions and roadshows that we've done, we've now thought of deepening that relationship with these people and saying, we would like you to support us and continue sustaining the project going forward. And so that's given way to a community offering that has opened, and in a way allows for all of these people to, you could say, sustain the project for the years to come. One of y'all want to share more? Maybe Jethro.
So it's definitely been a long process getting to where we are today, but we've felt comfortable, really trying to work out what's important in this system and how to make it practical. and it felt right that this year, this time of year was the time to start making it actionable and start to actually developing this infrastructure. That also is partly dependent on Hollow's development, which is seems to be going very well this year. So the path to a community offering, we considered doing IDO and other forms of fundraising, but we felt it didn't really sort of gel with our principles and the way we'd been building support. So we decided to sort of be maybe a little bit more humble and to try and build organically. And so we've just been preparing our community and the sort of adjacent communities over the last few months for this offering. So we've been, Sid and Emmeline have been writing more articles kind of to introduce the basics. And then we released our white paper. And so now that we've pulled the trigger this morning and announced the community offering, the feedback we're getting on Discord has been really good. We're seeing that the people that are coming to us, already know quite a bit about the background of Sacred Capital and Neighbourhoods. I've got really good questions and engaging. We had a fantastic salon this morning on Discord with people from all over the world discussing, ideas of how they think neighbourhoods would be useful for them, and very, very different use cases. I mean, it's really, really, really fascinating. So yeah, that's where we are and why we're doing it the way we're doing it.
Very cool. I mean, in this world, really underneath it, the only thing that matters is any project finds the true, like its version of itself that feels most like resonant or true and goes into the world in that form. And the beauty is that while there are templates, a bit like I think where you're pointing to earlier, Sid, there are definitely templates for doing things, and those templates will grow and evolve. The templates come from observing patterns that have to be created as well. So, that's very, very cool. Emmeline, anything from you on this? Because I know you've also been instrumental in bringing Neighbourhoods to where it is today.
Yeah. Just that it's, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I was in this super adrenaline rush of the sale opening. And it's just been, it's just really lovely and really affirming to see folks coming in who are names that, I've seen around the holochain ecosystem for the last few years. And, kind of like we've all been saying, just folks who really get it. And so, we're excited to be cultivating this sort of homegrown feel before then listing on DEXs, around the end of the year, just to make sure the community gets to experience that rather than like a launch platform or something like that.
White paper, is it? Or in the Medium article that was published today, we've got this little graphic of expanding circles and, along, with time, that circle has been expanding, and we expect it to continue expanding. So the community offering is part of that expansion, and then eventually next month or so culminate in DEX listing, which will allow that community to grow even wider, and then for eventually a community to be more of a social network than just a group of people. And so that's where this issuance of NHT and listing on DEXs, that's how it fits in. Jethro, you had something? You want to say something? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Can you move slightly closer to your mic, Sid?
Really?
Yeah.
Is this better? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been a long journey, Sid. What does it feel like to be here?
Interesting question. It definitely is validating. But I'm amazed with how non-stressful it is. And I think that's testament, or I would say that's the result of community. Like I've seen the holochain community at work, holding different spaces, which has allowed for these kinds of conversations to emerge, to allow for these kinds of relationships to emerge, to create a space which allows for projects like Neighbourhoods to incubate. I guess I don't want to use that word too loosely, or maybe that word gets used too much these days, but um, for a project like ours, I'm constantly bombarded by people within Holochain, and now, over the last few years with the community we built with Sacred Capital Neighborhoods as well, who get it and are, coming back with feedback for us in ways that push us forward. And yeah, I feel very held in that way, and so it's been, I would say, very validating, and very, like I said, surprisingly not stressful, because I think that's a result of all of these pieces coming together. I don't think I've fully processed what what this experience is. It's been a few hectic days, but maybe the Christmas break might be some time to step back and reflect, as Neighbourhoods, I think, in 2022 will go into the next gear of operation. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I think we'll get that much more formal, that much more structured in the way we think. Like our timelines will expand, and obviously I think our team and network will expand as well. And so yeah, I think moving from a community of few hundred people to like thousands is always an interesting jump. So equipping myself for that, I guess. But yeah, feel very held.
And then when you're reflecting back on, like, I guess when you started out on the Sacred Capital journey, I guess what I'm hearing is there's threads that have persisted very strongly, as well as there's something very fresh about like where things are today.
Yeah, that is a good assessment. I think the thread that has persisted and continues to give me energy is how much, or I would say the perspective with which I'm looking at things is just what this does with the economic system and what kind of wealth systems we might be moving towards. And for me, activation of reputation currencies and therefore more multi-dimensional wealth has been a motivation for Sacred Capital. And yeah, I think for years, like going around talking about it and people not really getting it, but there's something about Neighbourhoods which has kind of landed it in a very tangible way for people. And you're absolutely right. As it's landing, people get that this is connected to Sacred Capital in some way. Like almost very few people have been, have questioned that connection or haven't seen, are unable to see it. And that's amazing for me. And so, you're right, there's this freshness to Neighbourhoods. I think it's that visual language, like the team coming together the way it has over 2021. The visual language, shout out to Pablo for the incredible work that he's done. I think just that itself gives Neighbourhoods such a resplendent identity. People like Emmeline, Jethro, who've been working with Sacred Capital for I would say years now, and grappling with it. 3 years, yeah. And for them to be part of that landing of Sacred Capital into something, as playful but interesting as Neighbourhoods has been super special. So yeah, I think there's something interesting about that. Jethro?
So yeah, I think when I first sat down with Sid 3 years ago to discuss Sacred Capital with a whiteboard, I think one of the things I sort of dug into was like, what's the scale of this vision from a time perspective? Is this something like, we want to make a a startup, hit the hot times, mint some coins, whack something out and pass it on, or where are your true beliefs on this? And without a sort of a blink of the eye, Sid was like, "Oh, this is decades of work. This is not some flash in the pan." And it was very clear that, and it still is today, Sid's passion is about finding an alternative to the oversimplistic way we measure things with money. And I think, we're seeing this already with other communities and blockchains. I mean, I think, some of the stuff going on the NFTs is really interesting. But, sticking to Sacred Capital, we envisioned it that there was, Sacred Capital's core mission is to be this long-term holder of a language for discussing reputation, but Neighbourhoods is an actual manifestation of that. So, we took it as far as we could with Sacred Capital, defining what it meant, what its mission was, what this kind of like language is. But you need speakers. It's no good having a language and no one speaks it. It's dead. We want a living language. We had to bring it to life. And Neighbourhoods is that vehicle. This is the way we bring the language to people so they can speak it in their interactions and in their communities. So for me, this has been a great to go from such a conceptual level that, I'll be quite honest, in the beginning, I spent a lot of time head scratching, to something now that is really, really concrete and tangible. And as I say, that we can have, great conversations with people about, and they can see how they're going to implement it and use it.
Emmeline, anything from your side?
I mean, when I first came into contact with Sacred Capital, it was basically soliciting Sid's expertise in the reputation design field, as we were in the Commons Engine and with metacurrency, trying to grapple with how to speak about multidimensional wealth and all of this possible richness in the sorts of data that you can now collect, in huge masses of people across the world, and really trying to figure out how to square that, I think, with the rest of the Web3 community and with tokenomics as it was like popping off in 2017. And so really, I've always kind of, held Sacred Capital in this place of like, oh my gosh, like a kindred spirit organization that sort of is trying to seek forms of value exchange beyond money and beyond tokens. And so it's just a really beautiful synergy. And it's so nice to be all here together designing this thing. And I think doing it in a way that is very explicitly like simple. Like, I think we've all arrived at this place where we just want it to click, and have dropped all of these airs and all of these, lofty pretensions about philosophical dimensions of value and all this. And, it's nice to arrive and to land at a place where, I think we all want people to be able to design reputation and design culture online, like in the way that you would, toggle in a form or something like that. So it's just really exciting for all of this stuff that, I came to from a very heady place to just like, how can we land this simply? And I think we're really moving toward that here in Neighbourhoods.
Sid, if you're about to speak, I think Jethro is going to get frustrated that you're too far from the microphone again.
No.
Uh-oh. Please don't shift distance from microphone.
Volume's here and Sid's is here, and it's like, oh, that's a really big difference.
It's weird with all these cables and equipment I've got going. Yeah, I tend to overcomplicate my infrastructure sometimes.
David's just got a knob he's twiddling.
Yeah, there's probably some knob somewhere. Right?
Yeah. No, I'm actually playing with this. So no, yeah. Well, it's definitely for me as well. It's like it's really awesome to be here today and listen, as Emmeline, I think you used to say that inner simplicity, because actually, like, you can see that come through in the visual language, actually in the writing recently, and I think, like, at the heart, even at Sacred Capital, there really is an inner simplicity. And it's actually nice. It's really nice for me to see the timing of, like, it's something that's probably in a form has landed for people, but can land in a different way as the world's shifting as well. It's always nice to see. Nicer. It's very beautiful to see convergence of the macro and micro come together, and it feels like very strongly that's happening here. And it's also great for me because, like, is my role in a way is to or at least how I perceive it, is to ignore in the holochain ecosystem things like the day-to-day going on of Sacred Capital, because there's so much attention and tending towards these spaces, and from my experience, so little tending towards all of these other spaces where holochain can play, a pivotal role. And actually, and that brings up all sorts of emotions at different times, and that is. But one of the things that's, like, kind of the thread that's so strong is when you sit here today listening to what you guys are talking about, where things are, where they're going to go, that as you're drawing in some kind of, like, health tech infrastructure into this ecosystem as well, what's going to start happening is someone's going to say, hey, hang on a second, we could be thinking differently about what we're doing, and then start to use neighborhoods tooling, etc. So you think, like, it's just one of those moments where I can sit and appreciate and enjoy the different perspectives and different ways of building things in the world, and different things that people want to build. And it's this moment. I think Sid and I, we had a chat sometimes, like, the holochain ecosystem can feel like super exclusive and almost arrogant, like how it presents itself. But then there are also moments where you sit here, like today, where you see how open it is, the coming together of people, the coming together of ideas and the possibilities. So it's very cool for me, like, reflecting on, and it's really nice as well. Like, this again, why these conversations are so important for me, like, to have, within this ecosystem, because you can just start to show that there are all types of people and things and tools and ideas that are coming through in these really early days. And it's a very cool one.
Yeah. I have to say, on that note, like, one of my favorite things, I guess, about having, like, a really inviting visual language that we've really tried to cultivate here is that people come in and they're like, I know what you're getting at. I know what you're talking about. It's this. And, like, it's different for everyone, right? But everyone has the same feeling that it's, like, really landing. And that's also a product of, like, ultimately we're creating tools for developers and for people who want to be spinning up their own tooling, right? So it's like that sort of force of inspiration, and we would be crazy not to invite all of those wild dreams and ideas.
I will also add, there's an interesting, particularly 2021, it feels like things have gotten much more utilitarian and what's the word? Grounded? I don't think grounded is a word, but it's more on a day-to-day basis. Conversations within the holochain, within neighborhoods, like the stuff that we're doing, feels really, at the ground level. Like, we're talking so specifically about how, hey, what we're building needs to fit in with what you're building. And because of those relationships and conversations over the last couple of years, that fit is really, really effortless, whereas so many ecosystems you can feel that friction, and then people wondering what's in it for them versus the other. But I think some of that groundwork is allowing today for these very specific conversations to just flow forward. We had this question come up earlier in Discord earlier this week, when someone read the white paper, and they talking about so many different pieces needing to come together. And I actually think for anyone in the Web3 ecosystem can actually see these pieces coming in together. And so one of the reasons we pulled the trigger on Neighbourhoods was, hey, these things are happening. Like, all of this tech that's modular and composable is coming. It needs a container to make it all coherent and for it to click. And so Neighbourhoods for me, has really felt like the most obvious thing to do. And it hasn't felt like this story that needs to be spun, or this leap that we're requiring people to make. And that's very comforting. It almost feels like we can actually focus on the work rather than like the perception of it, which is very important.
Yeah, super. Well, is there anything else you guys want to share, or do you want to? Hopefully this will be published in time. Do you want to give people like specific instructions on what to do after? I don't think you're going to have any more motivation than seeing the visual language. I completely agree. So, but is there anything specific you want people to be doing after watching this, getting this far?
Jethro, Emmeline. I was about to say, to be honest, it's selling out so fast, we might not even have time to get to anyone else.
Yep. At risk of sounding cliche, like, get in before it's too late, for real.
Yeah. I can just say it's just been great to have people's support over the last few years, and we're really looking forward to expanding our community for the years to come, and very grateful that we can do this. It feels really wholesome right now. Yeah, and thank you for your support in the years to come.
So yeah, if you want to find out more, neighbourhoods.network is where all the information is.
Yeah. And apart from that, there's our Discord, and some of the Medium articles we published have more details for all of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a community offering article floating around. I'm sure it would be paired with this video once it comes out.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that everyone who sees this gets to see that too.
Cool. And the beauty is, well, if people miss out on the community offering, that NHT will be available on DEXs. And while again, for some of you might not like fees on things like Uniswap, a DEX is an amazing way. It might be on QuickSwap or other spaces, and the DEX is
SushiSwap.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. So the SushiSwap part that's on Polygon, and
we'll be on Polygon. That's as well. So.
Yeah, and so it's a really easy way to just also plug in. Super. Well, guys, congratulations on getting here.
Thank you. And thank you for seeding these conversations, David. I think we've had these conversations spaced out over a year. I'm really grateful that you hold these spaces that allow for these kinds of conversations to emerge.
Yeah, thanks for being along on this journey, David.
Yeah.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Well, you know where to check out Neighbourhoods, and we'll look forward to catching up in the new year when there's a token out and all sorts of other things are emerging. Product will be emerging, community will be growing, team will be emerging, and living with a token as well, living with a monetary or financial representation of the value of the Neighbourhoods ecosystem.
That's right. Living with the when moon questions, but yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, guys. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.